Hi, everyone. So you reached out asking about the Chiquina Wall. We're pretty sure you mean the Great Wall of China, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. An incredible topic. Truly massive.
Absolutely. And we wanted to take a deep dive into it with you. What an immense subject.
It really is. And I think one of the first things, to get straight is that it's not actually one single wall.
Right. Not just one long line on a map.
Exactly. It's much more like a huge network, a system of fortifications built across northern China
Yeah.
and over a very, very long time.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. We want to really unpack what this structure is, how it came to be, its key parts, and maybe why it still, resonates today.
Definitely.
We've got some great textual sources here detailing the history, the build, the features, significance, the whole picture.
Good stuff.
So let's jump in. Where does this whole story even begin? The origins.
Okay, so the earliest bits, they actually go way back. We're talking 7th century BC. This was during the spring and autumn and warring states periods.
So China wasn't unified yet.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It was basically a collection of different states, kingdoms, often fighting each other. And these individual states, they started building walls on their own borders for protection.
Ah, okay. So it wasn't one big project from day one. It was more like separate kingdoms building their own defenses first.
Precisely. Then the really big shift happens around 220 BC. That's when Qin Shi Huang comes in, the first emperor to unify China.
Right, a huge figure.
Huge figure. And part of his whole plan for a strong central empire was to, connect many of these existing walls.
Connect them, so not building it all from scratch.
Not entirely, no. He initiated a massive project to link up fortifications, especially along the northern frontier, to create a more unified defense against nomadic groups. But a lot of it involved connecting and reinforcing what was already there.
Okay, that's a key distinction. And what were those early walls made of?
Mostly rammed earth. Basically compacting soil very tightly. Sometimes wood or local stones too, but rammed earth was common.
Rammed earth. So not the iconic brick and stone wall that probably comes to mind for most people listening. That was later.
Exactly. That's a later development. After Qin, you had subsequent dynasties, the Han, the Sui, the Jinzan. They all continued working on the walls, building new sections, repairing old ones, expanding the system over centuries.
It's incredible to think of it as this continuous project across so many different eras.
That really is.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. Our sources really seem to zero in on the Ming Dynasty. It sounds like that's when the wall we often picture really took shape.
Absolutely. The Ming Dynasty, that's 1368 to 1644, they're responsible for the most, let's say, extensive and best preserved sections that survive today.
Right.
And what's really key here is the leap in construction techniques. They started using huge amounts of baked bricks and strong lime mortar, kind of like an ancient cement, plus cut stone blocks.
Ah, so much stronger material.
Much stronger, much more durable. It probably reflects, ongoing threats, but also maybe a more stable economy that could fund such massive upgrades.
So the classic image, the really impressive stone and brick sections snaking over mountains, that's largely Ming Dynasty work.
That's largely Ming, yes. And they didn't just build the wall itself better. They integrated a whole defensive system. Watchtowers became much more common, beacon towers for signaling.
Signaling? How did that work?
With smoke signals during the day and fire at night, it allowed them to send messages about enemy movements really quickly along the line. They also built fortresses and garrisons behind the wall to house troops and supplies.
Wow, so a truly integrated military system built right into the structure, a complete defense strategy.
Pretty much. Very sophisticated for its time.
But the sources also mentioned that eventually its strategic importance kind of faded. What happened there?
Well, under the Qing dynasty, which followed the Ming, China's borders actually expanded significantly northward.
So the wall wasn't the frontier anymore.
Exactly. It ended up well inside Qing territory. So its original purpose as a primary defensive line against northern invaders just wasn't as relevant. Major construction pretty much stopped by the 17th century.
Interesting how its function was so directly tied to the empire's changing borders. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the actual construction. I mean, the scale is just staggering to think about.
Oh, it's mind-boggling. The sheer amount of labor and resources, as we said, materials varied a lot. Early on, lots of rammed earth, wood, local field stones.
Right.
But then the Ming really went big with the kilned bricks, the mortar, the cut stone blocks. Much more labor-intensive, much more resource-intensive.
And the people who built it, who were they?
It was a massive workforce. You had soldiers, huge numbers of peasants conscripted for duty, and also convicts, people sentenced to labor.
And the conditions must have been, well, awful.
Unbelievably difficult. You're talking about working in really challenging terrain, steep mountains, deserts. Then there's the weather, freezing winters, scorching summers, plus the logistics of just getting food, water, and materials to these often remote sites.
It's hard to even imagine. How did they move all that stone and brick, especially up mountainsides?
Mostly brute force. Human labor carrying, pulling. They used animals like oxen and donkeys where possible. Simple tools, too, like levers, ropes, maybe basic wheelbarrows or carts. Nothing like modern machinery, obviously.
Incredible.
And a really crucial point is how they adapted. They almost always used local materials whenever they could. If they were in a rocky area, they used stone. If it was flatter, maybe more earth or brick. They built with the landscape, not just imposing something on it.
That makes sense given the sheer length and the different environments it crosses. Very practical.
It had to be.
So we've established it's way more than just a wall. It's this whole system. Can you break down some of those key features for us?
Sure. So you have the wall itself, obviously, but its height and width actually varied quite a bit depending on the terrain and the perceived threat level. Often built right along mountain crests for that extra height advantage.
Strategic placement.
Definitely. Then the watchtowers. Super important. They were built at regular intervals along the wall.
And their job was?
Multiple things. Surveillance, obviously seeing the enemy coming, signaling, like we mentioned, with the smoke and fire. And they also served as barracks, providing shelter for the soldiers stationed there.
Got it. The eyes, ears, and communication hubs.
Pretty much. And then you had beacon towers, sometimes separate from the main wall line, specifically designed to relay signals over even longer distances, like a rapid communication network.
Ancient high-speed internet, kind of.
Huh. In a way, yeah. Allowed messages to travel incredibly fast for the time. Then you also had larger garrison towns and fortresses built at strategic points, often behind the wall.
For more troops and supplies.
Exactly. Housing larger contingents, storing weapons, grain, basically supporting the defense of a whole sector. And finally, you have the passes.
Passes, like gateways.
Yeah, essentially fortified gateways.
Mm-hmm.
These were built at crucial choke points like valleys or roads, allowing controlled passage through the wall for trade, officials, armies, but heavily defended.
So it wasn't just about keeping people out, but also controlling movement through it.
Absolutely. Which leads us nicely into its significance, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about why it was built and what it represented. The military purpose seems obvious, but how effective was it?
Well, its main goal was definitely military defense against those northern nomadic groups, the Xiongnu, the Mongols, and others over the centuries. Was it foolproof? No. It was breached several times.
Okay.
But it absolutely served as a major deterrent. It channeled attackers towards fortified passes, slowed them down, and crucially, acted as that early warning system. It bought time for the empire to mobilize.
So a barrier, a communication line, and a delaying tactic.
You could put it that way. And thinking back to Qin Shi Huang starting that major unification effort, symbolically, it must have been huge, right?
Oh, massively. Connecting those walls was a powerful statement about the new unified China, the emperor's power, the ability to command immense resources and labor. It became this enduring symbol of Chinese imperial strength and, well, Chineseness itself. And beyond the military and symbolic aspects, the sources mention economic roles, too. That seems less obvious.
Yeah, but important. By controlling movement through those passes, the wall system helped regulate trade along routes like the Silk Road.
Oh.
It allowed officials to inspect goods, levy taxes, and also control immigration to some extent. So it wasn't just keeping enemies out, it was also managing the flow of people and commerce, indirectly protecting those vital trade routes.
Wow. Border control, military defense, customs station, all rolled into one gigantic structure.
It really was multifaceted.
And its meaning today, it's clearly shifted again.
Completely. Today, it's probably the most powerful cultural icon of China. It represents the depth of Chinese civilization, this idea of resilience, endurance. It's a huge source of national pride.
And globally recognized, too.
Absolutely. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the new 7 wonders of the world. It draws millions of tourists who want to see this incredible feat of engineering and history.
It really is astonishing when you stop and think about it. The sheer scale, the centuries of work, the diverse materials, the logistics, all done with pretty basic tools by our standards.
It's almost impossible to comprehend the human effort involved. Just a staggering testament to what people can achieve, their ingenuity, their perseverance, even under the most difficult conditions.
Truly highlights the incredible determination and the sheer organizational power required over generations.
Couldn't agree more. It represents centuries of accumulated knowledge, engineering skill, and strategic thinking.
So wrapping this up, it's clear the Great Wall is so much more complex than just, well, a Great Wall. It's this layered structure with a history that stretches back millennia.
Exactly. It's this amazing blend of, like you said, human ingenuity, military strategy, political symbolism, and just an unbelievable amount of sheer hard work.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. When you consider its original functions, defense, control, and its status now as this global symbol, what does the Great Wall's enduring presence tell us about how ideas of defense, power, and even cultural identity change over thousands of years?
That's a great question. How structures built for one purpose take on entirely new meanings later on.
Definitely something to think about. Maybe it inspires you to look into the stories behind other huge monuments around the world, too. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.